My best friend started acting strange after I got engaged. When I found out why, I couldn't believe everyone. I'm Sarah. And I need to share something that happened to me recently because honestly, I'm still processing it all. This story involves my best friend Jake, who I've known for 10 years, and how everything changed when I got engaged. What I discovered about him completely shattered everything I thought I knew about our friendship. Well, let me start from the beginning. Jake and I met in college during our sophomore year. We were both studying communications, and we got paired up for this massive project that was worth like 30% of our grade. I remember being so nervous because I'd heard he was this really smart, popular guy, and I was just this quiet girl from a small town who barely knew anyone. But Jake was incredible. He was funny, kind, and he actually listened when I talked. We spent countless hours in the library working on that project, and somewhere between arguing about presentation formats and sharing terrible cafeteria coffee, we became best friends. It was one of those friendships that just clicked, like we'd known each other forever. After graduation, we both stayed in the same city. Jake got a job at a marketing firm, and I started working at a nonprofit. We'd hang out at least twice a week. Sometimes more, movie nights, hiking on weekends, trying new restaurants, going to concerts. He was like the brother I never had. My parents loved him, my other friends adored him, and honestly, he made my life so much better just by being in it. Over the years, we both dated other people. Jake had a few serious relationships, and I had mine. We'd always be there for each other through breakups, celebrating new relationships, giving advice. It was never weird or complicated. We were just really solid friends who genuinely cared about each other's happiness. Then I met David about 2 years ago. He's a teacher at a local elementary school, and we met at a friend's birthday party. David is everything I ever wanted in a partner. He's thoughtful, makes me laugh until my stomach hurts, and he has this way of making even ordinary moments feel special. Jake seemed to like him too, at least at first. They'd hang out when David came to our group events, and Jake never said anything negative about him. David and I took things slow, but by last year, we both knew this was it. We were talking about moving in together, maybe getting a dog, all those future plans that couples make when they're serious. Jake was supportive, or at least I thought he was. He'd ask how things were going, give David guy advice about surprising me, normal best friend stuff. Then David proposed 3 months ago. Oh my God, it was perfect. He took me to this little cabin by the lake where we'd had our first weekend getaway, and he proposed at sunset on the dock. I was completely surprised and so happy I couldn't stop crying. The ring was beautiful, a vintage setting with a diamond that caught the light perfectly. I couldn't wait to share the news with everyone, especially Jake. I called him immediately after David and I got back to the cabin. I was practically bouncing with excitement. Jake, oh my God, you'll never guess what just happened. Hey Sarah, what's up? His voice sounded a little flat, but I was too excited to really notice. David proposed. We're engaged. Can you believe it? There was this long pause, like, uncomfortably long. Finally, he said, wow, that's big news. His response was so underwhelming that it actually made me pause. Are you okay? You sound weird. No, I'm fine. Just surprised, I guess. Congratulations. Even then, something felt off, but I brushed it aside. Maybe he was just caught off guard, or maybe he was in the middle of something important at work. But over the next few weeks, Jake's behavior became increasingly strange. First, it was little things. He'd take forever to respond to my texts, when usually he'd reply within minutes. When we'd make plans, he'd cancel at the last minute with vague excuses about work or not feeling well. During our phone calls, he seemed distracted, like his mind was somewhere else entirely. Then he started making these weird comments. I'd be talking about wedding planning, and he'd say things like, "Are you sure you're not rushing into this?" Or a lot of people think they're ready for marriage but aren't really. When I'd share something exciting, like finding the perfect venue or choosing bridesmaids' dresses, he'd respond with, well, hopefully you won't regret these decisions later. At first, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was going through something personal, Or maybe he was just one of those people who gets weird about big changes. But it kept getting worse. The breaking point came about 6 weeks after the engagement. David and I were having an engagement party, nothing huge. Just our close friends and family at my parents' house. Jake was supposed to be there, obviously. He was going to be one of David's groomsmen, and I was so excited for everyone to celebrate together. But the morning of the party, Jake texted me, "Hey, something came up with work. Won't be able to make it tonight, sorry." I stared at that text, in disbelief. This was my engagement party. We'd been planning it for weeks, and he'd confirmed he'd be there just 3 days earlier. I called him immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later, same thing. The party was lovely, but I kept thinking about Jake's absence. People kept asking where he was, and I had to keep making excuses. Oh, he had a work emergency, I'd say, but inside I was hurt and confused. David noticed I was upset. During a quiet moment, he pulled me aside and asked what was wrong. "It's Jake," I said. "He's been acting so strange since we got engaged, and now he didn't even show up tonight." David looked thoughtful. "You know, I've noticed he's been kind of cold to me lately. Last time we all hung out, he barely said 2 words to me." That's when I realized it wasn't just my imagination. Something was seriously wrong with Jake, and I needed to figure out what it was. I decided to go to his apartment the next day. I'd had enough of the weird texts and avoided calls. We needed to talk face to face, like adults who'd been best friends for 10 years. I knocked on his door around noon on Sunday. I could hear movement inside, so I knew he was home. It took him forever to answer, and when he finally opened the door, he looked terrible. His hair was messy, he had dark circles under his eyes. And he was wearing the same clothes I'd seen him in 2 days earlier. "Sarah, what are you doing here? We need to talk." "Jake, something's been going on with you for weeks, and I'm worried about you." He hesitated, like he was going to close the door, but then he stepped aside and let me in. His apartment was a mess, which was totally unlike him. Jake was usually obsessively neat. We sat on his couch, and I could feel the tension in the air. This was not how conversations with my best friend were supposed to feel. "Jake, what's going on? You missed my engagement party yesterday. You've been weird and distant, and you keep making these comments about my engagement like you think I'm making a mistake. If something's bothering you, just tell me." He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red, like he'd been crying. "Sarah, He stopped and took a shaky breath. "God, this is so hard. Just tell me, whatever it is, we can figure it out. We're best friends." He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "That's just it. We're best friends. That's all we'll ever be." I was confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm in love with you, Sarah. I have been for years." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat there, staring at him, trying to process what he'd just said. "I've been in love with you since probably our junior year of college," he continued, and now that he'd started talking, it was like everything came pouring out. "Do you remember that night we stayed up until 4 a.m. working on our senior thesis presentations, and you fell asleep on my shoulder in the library? That's when I knew. But you were dating that guy Mark. And I didn't want to ruin our friendship, so I never said anything." I was speechless. 10 years of friendship, and I'd had no idea. And then after graduation, I kept thinking maybe someday the timing would be right. Maybe we'd both be single at the same time. And I could tell you how I felt, but there was always someone else. For you, I mean. I dated other people, but it was always just killing time, I guess, hoping that eventually you'd see me differently. "Jake, I had no idea. I know you didn't. I got really good at hiding it, and most of the time, I was okay with just being your friend. It was better than not having you in my life at all." But then David happened. His voice cracked when he said David's name. "At first, I thought it would be like all the others. You'd date for a while, it wouldn't work out, and things would go back to normal. But it was different with him, wasn't it? I could see how happy he made you, how you lit up when you talked about him. And I knew I was losing you forever. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Jake, when you called me that night to tell me about the engagement, it felt like my whole world just ended. Like everything I'd been hoping for all these years was officially over, and I know that's not fair to you. I know you never promised me anything, and I know you deserve to be happy. But God, Sarah, it hurts so much. He was crying now, and I realized I was too. These past few weeks, I've been trying to figure out how to be okay with this, how to be happy for you when it feels like my heart is being ripped out. And I couldn't handle your engagement party because seeing you celebrate with him, seeing how excited you are about your future together, I just couldn't do it. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us crying. I didn't know what to say. How do you respond when your best friend tells you he's been in love with you for years? Why didn't you ever tell me? I finally asked. Because I was terrified of losing you completely. Our friendship means everything to me, even if it's not what I really want. And now I've probably ruined it anyway by telling you. I reached over and took his hand. You haven't ruined anything. Haven't I? How can we go back to normal after this? He was right, and we both know it. Everything had changed in that moment. Not because I didn't care about him, but because I finally understood why things had felt so off lately. Jake hadn't just been acting weird about my engagement, he'd been grieving the loss of a future he'd imagined for years. I love you, Jake, I said, and I saw hope flash in his eyes before I continued, but I love you as my friend. I'm not in love with you, and I don't think I ever could be. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because that's just not how I feel. He nodded, looking defeated. I know. I've always known, really. But I guess I kept hoping. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry you've been carrying this alone for so long, and I'm sorry I never realized. But I'm also sorry that I can't give you what you want. I know you can't. And I wouldn't want you to fake it just to make me feel better. We talked for another hour. Jake told me about all the times he'd almost said something, about how hard it had been to watch me with other guys. About how he'd convinced himself that maybe someday I'd realize we were meant to be together. I told him how much his friendship meant to me, how I never wanted to lose him, but also how I couldn't imagine my life without David. By the time I left that day, we both understood that our friendship would never be the same. Not because we didn't care about each other, but because Jake needed space to figure out how to be okay with just being friends. He asked me not to tell David about his feelings. At least not right away, and I agreed. It felt like Jake's secret. To share or not share. That was 2 weeks ago. Jake and I have texted a few times since then, but we haven't seen each other. He stepped down as one of David's groomsmen, saying he had some family obligations that would make it difficult to fulfill his duties. David was disappointed but understanding. I haven't told David the real reason yet, but I think I need to. We're getting married in 4 months, and I don't want to start our marriage with secrets. I also don't know if Jake and I will ever get back to the friendship we had before, and that breaks my heart. The whole situation has made me think about friendship and love and how complicated they can be when they intersect. Jake was my best friend, and in some ways, he still is, but he was also secretly in love with me for years, and I never knew. I keep wondering if there were signs I missed, or if I somehow led him on without realizing it. I also keep thinking about all those times he was there for me through breakups and dating drama. Was he genuinely trying to help me find happiness? Or was he hoping that my relationships would fail so he'd have a chance? I don't think Jake would ever consciously sabotage my happiness, but the thought has crossed my mind. The hardest part is that I miss him. I miss our easy friendship, our inside jokes, our long conversations about everything and nothing. I miss having someone who knew me so well that I didn't have to explain myself. But I also understand why he needs distance right now. David has been incredibly supportive through all of this, even though he doesn't know the full story yet. He's noticed that Jake and I aren't talking as much, and he's been patient with my explanations about us working through some friendship issues. That just makes me feel more guilty about not telling him the truth. I guess what I'm struggling with most is the feeling that I somehow failed as a friend. How did I not notice that Jake was in love with me? How did I miss years of him hiding his true feelings? And now that I know, how do we move forward? Some of my other friends have said that Jake should have told me sooner, that it wasn't fair for him to carry those feelings in secret for so long. Others have said that he was protecting our friendship by not saying anything. I honestly don't know who's right. What I do know is that Jake is a good person who found himself in an impossible situation. He fell in love with his best friend, and there's really no good way to handle that. If he'd told me years ago, it might have ended our friendship then. By waiting. He at least got to keep me in his life, even if it wasn't in the way he wanted. But now everything's out in the open, and we're both trying to figure out what comes next. I hope that someday we can be friends again, even if it's different from before. I hope Jake can find someone who loves him the way he deserves to be loved. And I hope David and I can move forward without this situation casting a shadow over our relationship. I never expected that getting engaged would cost me my best friend, even temporarily. But I guess life is full of unexpected complications, and sometimes love, even unrequited love, changes everything. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening to my story. I don't really know what I'm looking for by sharing it, maybe just someone to tell me that these kinds of situations happen, and that it's possible to work through them. Or maybe I just needed to get it all out there, to stop carrying this weight alone. Have any of you been through something similar? Either as the person with unrequited feelings or as the friend who didn't know. I'd love to hear how you handled it, or if you have any advice for moving forward. I love David completely, and I'm excited about our future together. But I also can't help but mourn the friendship I've lost, at least for now. I guess that's just part of growing up. Sometimes love, in all its forms, forces us to make difficult choices and accept painful changes. Anyway, that's my story. Thanks for listening. And I hope things work out for all of us in the end.